And at 10, Crying Child. Okay, so I'm putting this one at number 10 because I personally don't think that the Crying Child is a Springlock victim. To me, there's just no logical way that animatronic jaw should have crushed his skull, because, you know, the Springlocks were already active and that would require a lot of power to crush a skull anyway. However, it is possible that since this is a series about haunted animatronics possessed by spirit metal, that logic kind of gets thrown out the window. So assuming that he is a Springlock victim, that's brutally scary. Being thrown into an animatronic's mouth and crying so much that you make the jaw snap onto your own skull, killing you instantly? Holy crap, that is nightmare fuel. That's why some people are scared of robots or animatronics, and while it may not be realistic, the possibility of it happening is still horrifying to say the least, especially since not even that long ago he lost his sister to Circus Baby, and that's pretty messed up. And I'm sure that Michael, who put the kid in his mouth, as long as, you know, I'm wrong about my theory, he'd be scarred for life, and I think I would be too. Before we move on to number 9, can you do me a favor and smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet if you are looking forward to this list. I saw a load of comments asking for it, so this better not flop. If it flops, so help me, you will all have a reckoning. The more likes we get, the more likely we are to do a part 2, and it also helps us against the algorithm almighty and lets us grow the channel, which means more cool vids for you, so you know, it's a win-win, so thank you. And at 9, The Twisted Ones. The Twisted Ones novel starts a year after The Silver Eyes ended, with Charlie in university. One day, however, Clay Burke comes to see Charlie, and for some reason brings her to see a corpse with familiar wounds. This could either be because she would recognize them, or because she was working with the police, or because they had to advance the plot. I don't know, I haven't read the original novels, but I want to. However, looking at the wounds, she confirms that they are in fact a Springlock failure, meaning that we have an unnamed Springlock victim in the Twisted Ones novel. If this character does have a name, like if it's revealed in later down the line or something, please let me know, because I couldn't find one online. However, while this may seem insignificant to you, the real horror of this number comes from what it signifies. This Springlock marks the return of William Afton, since at the same time, Clay also tells her that a blood sample they took from Afton showed that the body was a fake, or at least it was fake blood. The return of a killer, and the purple guy of all of them, that's pretty damn scary if you ask me. And at 8, The New Kid. Continuing with the theme of FNAF books, what about the story The New Kid from 1:35 AM, the third Fazbear Frights book? The story revolves around Devon, Mick, and Kelsey. Devon and Mick are outcasts. They aren't popular, they aren't cool, but when the new kid Kelsey arrives at their school, they make a new friend, despite Kelsey being charismatic and adored by everyone else in the school. Over time though, Devon grows jealous of Kelsey, since Kelsey has everything that Devon wants. So in an act of revenge or to gain control, because you know that's kind of serial killery, Devon hatches a plan to lure Kelsey to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's to trap him in a Springlock suit for a couple hours, to try to humble him, I guess. But the plan goes horribly wrong. After getting in the suit, the Springlocks fail, as expected, because you know this is a FNAF book, causing Kelsey's blood to soak into the fur of the animatronic and pull around the ground. Devon and Mick leave Kelsey for dead so that they won't get in trouble, but something doesn't feel right. So a week later, Devon returns to make sure that Kelsey's body is still there, for some reason. He sticks his hand into the animatronic's mouth to feel if it's there, and snap! The Springlocks fail yet again, as per usual, and Devon gets his hand stuck inside the suit and bleeds out, but not before seeing a body in the suit, but with black hair instead of Kelsey's blonde hair. If that's not scary, then you need to go see a doctor, because that's bone chilling. That's messed up. No. And at 7, Fritz. Fritz is also one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. I guess in a way it was meant to be, given that both of their names start with an F and are shorter than their other names. The others actually also have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, and Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters as well. That's freaking weird, man. But not much else is known about Fritz. There originally was a theory that Fritz was a good guy who wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Ultimate Custom Night during like an April Fool's update or something, where Foxy's mechanics were changed to just like block one of the doors instead of kill you. Like, this was actually a joke though, since other mechanics were referencing other theories as well, like Phone Guy being Springtrap, and like, cause well, Springtrap couldn't be moving when Purple Guy was talking, as well as like Nightmare Freddy making you wake up from your nightmare, and that was referencing the dream theory. I mean, like, I wish I could wake up from this nightmare though. Oh wait, this is real? I talk about FNAF on the internet daily. That's actually a thing? I'm not Having a nightmare? Oh great. And at 6, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an unintentional victim of the purple guy, given that Elizabeth was in fact his daughter. In the aftermath of his murder den closing, Afton set up shop in a new restaurant he owned called Circus Baby's Pizza World. At least one that he started opening. Where the feature animatronics were actually giant murder robots hungry for the flesh of children. Because, you know, that's what this series has come to at that point. He warned his kids to stay away from the animatronics, especially his daughter Elizabeth, since she had such a fascination with the main star baby, but she didn't listen. So in a moment of ultimate regret, she done got herself scooped, basically insta-killing her while baby's arm grabbed her, pulled her in, and then crushed her and put her in a storage unit. While he didn't kill her directly, he still killed her, and then even victimized himself since, you know, it was his daughter that got scooped, and William's also a victim because he killed his daughter. But then this leads him to discover possession at the hands of Agony, but I don't think that he knows that it's Agony, but then that completely changes his motive, so he goes on to commit more murders. It's a pivotal death in the purple guy chronology, or story. I fight through in at number 5, Vanny. Vanny is kind of a different victim in the sense that she isn't dead, but she has been controlled by Afton in the form of a mind virus that is just pretty damn ridiculous even for the FNAF series. But presumably getting caught by testing the FNAF VR game, or maybe through FNAF AR, she gets partially controlled by William. Hence the potential double personality that we see as hinted at through the FNAF AR emails. But this could also just be Tape Girl that we hear in FNAF VR, who is the one who gives you false information about how to beat Glitch Trap. Vanny, we know, is a victim of the purple guy since, well, he's been the only killer in the series up until this point, and she wears a fabric bunny suit, alluding to the fact that William had his spring bunny suit that turned him into Spring Trap and, you know, the whole Glitch Trap thing. Gotta love them parallels. This is how serial killers are caught, though. Like, change your MO every once in a while. They only catch the stupid criminals, so don't be stupid. I mean, don't be a criminal. Especially, just don't do it. And at 4, Jeremy's. As I said in the Souls Trapped in Animatronics video, Jeremy is one of the biggest troll names in FNAF history, being used for 3 separate characters, which, I mean, doesn't sound like a lot, but for FNAF it is. However, only 2 of them are the direct victims of Purple Guy. Jeremy is the name of one of the original missing children, and as I said earlier, he goes on to possess Bonnie. The other Jeremy is a playtester for the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, the game we tested in FNAF VR, the one who tested it before Tape Girl, who ends up finding the Glitch Trap anomaly and causes him to go mad. And by going mad, I genuinely mean, like, absolutely psycho. Jeremy ends up cutting off his own face. But I mean, like, that's also interesting because, like, Withered Bonnie, the Withered Bonnie animatronic that we see in FNAF 2 is missing his face. And it's weird because Withered Bonnie is the Bonnie that's possessed by the missing children's incident Jeremy. Now, like, I don't know if that means anything or if it's intended or if it's just coincidence, but knowing this series, I'm always worried that, like, the smallest detail is gonna have the biggest consequence. And at 3, Am I Real? Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear, is presumably the primary and most recurrent antagonist in Dormitibus. Am I Real has 2 different forms. His first form is Cake Bear. Cake Bear's design originated from the Save Him minigame, where he delivered cake to children while a kid is murdered outside. He is the predecessor of both Fredbear and Freddy Fazbear. Cake Bear is a brown bear animatronic that also acts like a spring-locked suit that appears in most of the main nights. Although they do look similar, the only similarities he has to Freddy Fazbear in reality is that they both possess a top hat, are brown, have blue eyes, and are a bear. Am I Real's second form is a form that resembles Springtrap, however. This form has a green color much like Springtrap and contains human remains. His right eye socket has gotten bigger on the side and a big hole can be seen on the right side of his head. His top hat has received some withering on it as well, and his lower jaw is slanted and worn down, no longer circular like Cake Bear's. He also has a sizable hole in the right side of his torso, revealing organs. Ha, lovely. Rips and tears cover his arms, revealing more human remains. He also appears to be missing at least 1 finger on his right hand, and it's absolutely terrifying to look at. Of course, 3 out of 10 of these are going to be from Dormitibus. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Did you watch the Dormitibus animatronics list? Penultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. I believe we all know this story by now. Everything was going well at first. They couldn't pin him down and he was on his way to immortality. Once William discovered Remnant, however, he spiraled. He wanted to use it to fuel his life and make himself truly immortal. So, in an effort to study it further, William lures possessed animatronics to the back room that they can't access and uses it to display dismantle them, planning to melt down their endoskeletons to make soul-infused metal. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the souls of the victims he claimed oh so long ago. Shocked, he tries to scare them by getting into his spring body suit, which also coincidentally makes him feel more powerful. However, this haste coupled with the leaking in the back room causes the spring locks to fail, crushing him in torturous agony for the next 30 years. However, he didn't die from this. As we learn in the Man in Room 1280, he was being kept alive by the spirit of another victim. So he was living that agonizing pain for 30 years, and that makes him damn well deserving of the number 2 spot. And before you ask, no, him and Garvey are 2 separate characters, meaning that they can both be included on this list. You're welcome. Finally, in at number 1, you. A spoiler alert for a fan game, and if I say which fan game, it's going to spoil it. So if you want to avoid spoilers, click away now. And thanks for watching. I'll give you a chance to do that now. Okay, now that you've prepared for spoilers, A Shadow Over Freddy's is a FNAF fan game created by FizzNom on GameJolt. It released on April 25th, 2018, and since it was made by the same guy who is currently working on FNAF Plus for the Fazbear fanverse, you know it's bound to be good. The gameplay of A Shadow Over Freddy's is a hybrid between a traditional point-and-click game and a free-roaming horror game. The player wakes up to find themselves with no memories in a black and white abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and is tasked with surviving 5 nights in escaping the restaurant. The player is given a different task each night and must complete said task before 6 AM and without being attacked by any roaming animatronics. However, the ending of the game has you getting trapped in a spring-lock suit and left to rot, meaning that you are a spring-lock victim, which is probably the scariest victim of them all, cause I don't know about you, but I'd rather not get spring-locked. Although I know there are plenty of you that would just love that. You'd fill the suit with liquids that aren't blood, and that's messed up. Like, I'm not one for kink shaming, but yeah, there's kinks, and then there's like being killed, you know? I don't know how else to put that. And at 10, William Afton. Again, could William have suffered a spring lock failure before getting trapped in the spring bodysuit like we see in FNAF 3? It's possible, and it certainly appears like that's the case in the FNAF novels, since William is described to have scars that are consistent with the spring lock failure before becoming spring trapped in the novels. So could it have happened in the games? Could William have been the reason the spring lock suits were retired? Since we hear of an unfortunate incident at the sister location, so is that unfortunate incident William? There are plenty of people it could be, but William having to deal with it would certainly get them put out of commission for a time. But with William continuing to use the suit and putting it on when the room was wet like we see in FNAF 3's cutscene, it suggests that that's probably unlikely, but it's still possible. So since this list is possible springlock victims, I think he deserves to be on this list, at least at number 10, since can we really talk about springlock victims without mentioning good old Willie Afton? Exactly. And at 9, Henry Emily. Now this is certainly an interesting case, because seemingly Henry has died multiple ways across FNAF canons, with his first apparent death being in FNAF World at the hands of Baby. His death in the novels seems to have happened before Silver Eyes starts, and then he dies in FNAF 6 along with everything else. But could one of these deaths involve the springlock failure, or something having to do with springlocks? I mean, maybe Afton offed Henry in one of these realities, or maybe Baby has some springlock mechanisms inside her when she killed Henry. Hell, maybe Henry just climbed into the wrong suit at the wrong time. It's a question that we don't really pay attention to because, well, Henry's death doesn't mean much to the story, unfortunately, but it's still true. Henry dying doesn't really mean much to the overall FNAF lore, and we didn't even know he was alive until FNAF 6, so maybe for irony's sake, Scott had him bite the dust in a quicker way, rather than just, you know, burning alive, because that sucks. Maybe he wanted to prevent himself from even more severe agony so that he didn't possess something. And at 8, Phone Guy. Phone Guy's death is one of the most mysterious deaths of all. We hear him die in FNAF 1 on night 4 with the sound of multiple animatronics banging on his doors, but we never really get an explanation as to what happens to him. We know he dies, but other than that, it's all speculation. One of the theories though is that animatronics got him and shoved him into a suit, resulting in a very painful death, especially since at this point the springlock suits were either still in operation or hadn't been totally removed. The actual timeline of the events of the springlock suits is a little messy since we don't really have years for things like them getting scrapped, yet it's still possible that Phone Guy was shoved into one or maybe used it to hide. After all, maybe Phone Guy is secretly William Afton and Scott just didn't want us to know that yet or something. I still feel like that might have been in the realm of possibility. Maybe not now, but it was. And at 7, Grim Fredbear. Grim Fredbear is one of the antagonists from Final Nights 3 Nightmares Awoken. He's only active on night 5 and found in the left hallway. Grim Fredbear resembles the normal golden Fredbear suit, only with his suit glowing a deep purple while the interior of the suit glows a bright white. His upper face appears to be torn off, including his eyes, leaving an empty, hollow, gaping hole in its place. The inside of the mask, though it appears like there's nothing really inside, actually conceals a white, pale human head that can only be seen during his jump scare. And before you ask, yes, it's mine. The animatronic is clearly meant to be a reference to Shadow Freddy and the theory that the Shadow animatronics were Springlock victims, which was later confirmed by Scott to be false when stating that William was the only victim of a Springlock failure. And in the museum level, which unlocks after night 5, it is revealed that Grim Fredbear is a Springlock victim, saying, quote, another Springlock failure victim, the second generation of Fredbear. Halfway through in number 5, Garvey. A psychopathic, cold-blooded killer. He stopped being human long ago. That's how Garvey is described in the extras of Dormitibus, the game from which he hails. Garvey is the penultimate antagonist of Dormitibus, and as a human, he was the man who murdered the missing children. He later went on to get trapped in Spring Bonnie, becoming Springtrap, and then was burnt to a permanent death in the Fazbear Frights fire. Garvey is a more gory version of Springtrap from FNAF 3. However, he is not William Afton, as the game was released before the name reveal, even before FNAF 4. Springtrap, but with hardly any exosuit or animatronic casing, whatever you want to call it. He crawls on all fours and uses his left hand as a foot and his left foot as a hand, like some demonic monkey from hell that Satan didn't sanction the creation of. Just look at this thing and tell me that it shouldn't be on this list. If you do, you'll be lying. And at 4, Golden Call. As a human, when alive, Golden Call's name was Kyle. However, he is now a Springlock victim stuck inside a Golden Freddy Springlock suit. Golden Call has the typical rundown Springlock suit vibe, similar to Springtrap. However, this is even more gruesome. His left ear is bent, he has guts coming out of basically every hole in his body, human eyes are hanging out of the animatronic's eye sockets. He's even missing exosuit on his right foot, and the character is holding a flesh-colored, at least it's flesh-colored, it may be even fully a flesh phone in his right hand that stays stuck to his head via more flesh or blood strands connecting to the side of his head. It's horrifying, dude. This is a monstrosity. And looking at his age on the wiki, Kyle was only 5 when he got Springlocked, which is absolutely nuts and just flat out horrible. So unfortunate, man. He was supposed to be the next best Fortnite player. That's a joke for the long-term subs. You know it. Getting close to the end in number 3, Kelsey. Kelsey is in essence the main antagonist of the Fazbear Fright story, the new kid from the 3rd Fazbear Frights book 135 AM. Kelsey had just moved to town and ends up making friends with the protagonist, Devin. Devin ends up getting jealous of how much everyone loves Kelsey, so he hatches a plan with his friend to trap him in a Springlock suit for a few hours. However, when they unleash their plan, the Springlock suit fails and kills Kelsey. At least, so they thought. Since a week later, Devin returns to make sure Kelsey is still there, for some reason, only to find a different body in the suit. He knows that it's someone else because the hair color's different, and then Devin gets stuck and bleeds out, only for the story to cut back to Kelsey meeting 2 more kids at his new school. This is an interesting story because while Kelsey did get Springlocked, he ended up being fine. So what happened? Some think that Kelsey is a ghost, while some think that he's the one you should not have killed. But no matter what, we all feel like there is a high possibility that Kelsey was a Springlock victim, at least when they were alive. We don't know how and we don't know when, but it's a definite possibility. And ultimately, in at number 2, missing children. Much like the Cassidy situation, the entirety of the missing children involved in the missing children's incident may have been Springlock victims. We're still unsure as to the method of extermination that William used on the screaming pests. Sorry, the kids who run around in my building hallways they're still getting to me. If they ever go missing though, these videos are not going to help me. Anyway, we don't know how William dispatched of these kids before shoving them into the suits, and honestly, there may not be a way that he killed them before shoving them in. The act of putting them in the suits may very well have been what killed them, which would make sense given that a springlock incident would be more agonizing than a simple knife to the chest. And a springlock collapse would be a more realistic way for the suits to start leaking blood and other fluids, since one knife wound wouldn't really do that, especially around their eyes. Even if the suits didn't like snap closed, if William shoved them into the suits, that's close enough for me. And at 10, shadow animatronics. One of the oldest theories is that the shadow animatronics are the first springlock victims, and while they are from the main FNAF universe, this is a fan theory, so it counts. This comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guide dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous springlock failures, which some interpreted as multiple springlock suits failing at once, since the term springlock in this situation is used to describe the suit as a whole, and instead of the individual springlock mechanisms that are present within the suit. So the line of multiple and simultaneous springlock failures could mean multiple of the springlocks inside one suit failing at the same time, or more than one suit failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in the springlock suits, which is where the shadow animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are of Freddy and Bonnie, the two animatronics that have springlock versions, and while there are holes in this theory, this is, like, potentially the case. It's an idea at the very least. So yeah, shadow animatronics are fan springlock victims because it's not confirmed. That's how I made it work. And it ate Fred Trap. To be honest, I searched this up just for the hell of it, and there actually are Fredbear versions of Springtrap, which is kinda cool, but I mean, kind of expected. Fred Trap is exactly what you would expect. Springtrap's look on a yellow Freddy animatronic. The designs are actually really well made and honestly are scarier than normal Springtrap for me. I mean, I don't know, I guess for some reason I think bears are scarier than rabbits. Don't know why I would think that. But I think that Scott made William use the Spring Bonnie suit because of how scared Scott himself was of it, but that could also just be idle speculation. There's another theory that I have that maybe he was going to use the Fredbear animatronic, but then after his son got killed by it, he switched to Bonnie. There are also even more rundown versions and even scrap versions of Fred Trap, which are already haunting when you don't think about the fact that it would still be William inside the suit being kept alive by the spirit of his dead kid. Yeah, so Fredbear is definitely one of the more strangely unique versions that I've seen for this list, and you know what? I'm pretty damn impressed. These designs are pretty good. And at 7, Michael Afton. This relies on heavy speculation and assumption. However, if the entered enema is truly what killed Michael's body, then could it be considered a spring locking? We don't really know if the Funtime animatronics have spring locks, but we can assume that they do thanks to their moving parts and abilities like a giant claw that goes out and stores items. But this would also mean that Ennard would have at least some of those same parts. So if the Funtime animatronics that were made around the same time as the original spring lock animatronics used similar parts or techniques, which is likely, that means that Michael Afton would also be a spring lock victim. We don't need solid proof since this is a possible spring locking victims list, so proof of possibility is all I really need. And honestly, I think that this would provide a good explanation as to why he turned purple. Since people who die don't turn purple. Instead, if they rot, they would most likely be depicted as green, especially when another major character is linked to the color purple. So, if that is indeed bruising, it would make sense if the spring lock mechanisms were hurting him from the inside out. And at 6, Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is such an infamous incident that I can already hear people groaning in the comments. However, what if the victim of the Bite of 87, whoever that actually was a victim of a spring lock failure? It could make sense, since the animatronics had no harmful tendencies before this, so a spring lock failure is a reasonable assumption as to why someone got a frontal lobe removed. And a spring lock failure, assumingly, would definitely provide enough power to do that, since the spring locks themselves would snap with such ferocity, and would probably circumvent the whole needing more power to do that thing. And if it was Jeremy, it would explain why the animatronics were suspended, because now one of their employees was bit and they had to promote him and fork over some extra cash to make sure that he didn't sue. So overall, whoever the Bite of 87 victim is could definitely have been a spring lock victim. And at 4, Cassidy. Cassidy is the most mysterious victim in the missing children's incident. Her name was hidden for years, only really being discovered recently, and honestly we don't know too much about her. We don't know how she died, so the potential is there for her to be a spring lock victim. Maybe William knew that it would be easier that way. After all, she does possess Golden Freddy, who we figure it was a spring lock suit, that ended up having the guts removed, hence the slumped overness. However, if this was the case and Cassidy's body was in that suit, they would have found it when they were gutting him. But maybe William was the one who gutted it, considering how he was the suit technician. And I mean, like, to be fair, for a suit technician, he did miss a fatal flaw with the animatronics that he literally designed, since, you know, he got snapped when the suit was wet. Either way, Cassidy being a spring lock victim would help explain a lot in the series. Just you know, the hallucinations and whatnot. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Reaper Spring Bonnie. Reaper Spring Bonnie, however, is the opposite of Stage Bonnie. This Reaper variant appears in Final Nights 3 and 4 and is an absolute monstrosity, but it's definitely more terrifying in Final Nights 4, so let's focus on that one. He is 100% the scariest animatronic in this series. In essence, Reaper Spring Bonnie is a nightmare spring trap. He has sharp teeth and a very damaged and withered body. His suit is dark yellow in color. He sports a big purple bow tie on his upper chest, kinda like Glitch Trap. And then, like the other Reaper animatronics, Reaper Spring Bonnie has one pair of hollow, dark eyes that will steal your soul. I added that last part, but it's probably true. In Final Nights 4, his appearance is much more disfigured and gruesome, with sharper teeth, sharper claws, a different jaw, growths on his shoulders resembling fungi, and you know, a kind of a gooier appearance overall. It's like the slime girl from YouTube if she made a FNAF character. He's also missing half of his right ear like Springtrap in FNAF 3, and his suit is more greenish in color this time around to be more like Springtrap. And oh my god, this thing is still terrifying, and it's more terrifying than Springtrap, okay? This is what Springtrap should have been, or honestly, this is what I think like a Nightmare Springtrap would look like, okay? This is like a prototype Burn Trap in my eyes, or the way I'm thinking, like Melt Trap, the next iteration of Afton. And at 9, Gabriel. Gabriel was one of the original 5 missing children from the first ever incident that we learned about in the games. We believe his soul passed into the Freddy animatronic based on the gravestone ending and the placement of the FNAF 3 heads. Gabriel hasn't really ever gotten much of a description aside from a brief mention in the books, but that description could also be referencing Jeremy, and it's just based on Crying Child from FNAF 4's 8-bit minigames, so there isn't really much validity to it. But I wonder how Gabriel feels about being the mascot of the company in essence, cause you know, with over 25 versions of the character being present throughout the separate games, you're a pretty popular fellow. I originally had a theory that we played as someone named Gabriel in FNAF VR, since we ended up getting stuck into the Freddy animatronic in the pizza party ending, but I think that Gregory from Security Breach will be a better Gabriel comparison, especially with this whole hiding in Glamrock Freddy thing. And at 8, Susie. Susie was the first to die, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it, but also kinda liberating if you think about it in another way. Horrifying because like, you know, you get killed out of nowhere and that sucks hard. But liberating because while yes, you're dead, you also dead, so you don't really have to worry about anything else. Well, I suppose not in this case since they go on to possess the animatronic, but like they don't have to worry about anything in their future, like just getting revenge on their killer. And honestly, that sounds like the life. Like not having to pay rent and then just doing everything in your power to stop a serial killer. That sounds like my kind of vacation. But nevertheless, being the first to die is a pretty serious thing. We know she was the first thanks to Withered Chica's voice line in Ultimate Custom Night, and keep in mind that the Withered animatronics are the original ones after being decommissioned when the restaurant closed prior to FNAF 2, since FNAF 2 is still a prequel and one of the first games in the timeline, so she is Withered Chica, even if she's also Chica. Gotta love the games. And at 3, Cassidy. Cassidy is probably who you'd expect to be number 1 on this list. You know, the generally assumed, the one you should not have killed. The missing children's victim who went on to possess Golden Freddy. Cassidy is described in the novels as a young girl with long black hair, which is also the description of the only human to appear in the FNAF survival logbook, or security logbook, I call it both. The name Cassidy was also discovered in that book, when a Reddit theorist going by the username DPowerful1 took wrong or highlighted numbers from various pages and put those into word search and basic like in coordinates, and then he ended up finding the name Cassidy, which has got to be the most complicated thing in history. Like, we dig through source code and we put audio files through goddamn spectrograms to try to find clues, but even this was too much for this series. Like, I don't know why I had to go and make things so complicated. Penultimately, in at number 2, Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims Purple Guy has had. Being the 6th victim, Charlotte gets killed outside the pizzeria, despite desperate attempts from her father, Henry, to prevent this, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed like a puppet to protect other kids but treat her as a priority. You know, he's a parent, I get it. However, when it gets trapped in its box, it's unable to make it out to Charlotte in time to save her. So in another attempt, the puppet saves her in another way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic. As the puppet, Charlotte then goes on to share her gift of the second chance with the other animatronics, bringing them to life as well, resulting in William's ultimate undoing. In a way, Charlotte is really the one you should not have killed, since if he had spared her, maybe he wouldn't have lost his life in the end, or been spring locked. So yeah, shouldn't have done it. Finally, in at number 1, us. Now, this is why Cassidy isn't number 1. No matter what, we are a victim of the purple guy, and not in any philosophical way either. We are a direct victim of the purple guy, or William Afton, or Glitch Trap, or whatever you want to call him. Since, thanks to FNAF VR, no matter what you do, you end up losing at the end of the game. You either merge with him and join him on stage, or you complete the ritual only to get locked away in your own mind as William walks free in your body, or the easier one, we get stuffed into Freddy at the end of the pizza party minigame. But if you end up collecting all 16 tapes and actually fully complete the game, you're a victim of the purple guy. Like, he uses your body to commit whatever comes next. I mean, we could be Vanny, we could be Tape Girl giving it another shot, we could be some random bystander, but either way, we the player get gotten by this toxic, poisonous grip that is the purple guy. So, yeah, I'm gonna put myself at number 1.